everyone. Welcome inside the Red Earth Production Studios for another edition of YBMcast. And today on Prep Baseball Talk, we are down one, but we've got our resident Prep Baseball Report guru, Kevin Moulder, with us. Kevin, how you doing, man?
Doing great, Brian. How about yourself?
Doing very well. We're down Matt, but I'm sure Matt will be back next week with us talking some baseball. We're heading into the home stretch, and things are starting to heat up. And we got some 80-degree weather coming next week, so I think it's matching it, right?
Yeah, we just got into May, and arguably, in my opinion, the best month of high school baseball for the state of Missouri. So I'm excited for it.
Absolutely. And, we were talking last week about some big matchups that we're going to get into. But I want to start off with the Prep Baseball Report rankings. You've got some new rankings out and another shakeup.
Yeah, the 10 names didn't change very much, but the order in which they were in changed considerably. There was a lot of good matchups within the top 10, which is always nice because you get some perspective. And we even had some outer region games, some Springfield teams playing Kansas City, some St. Louis teams playing mid-Missouri teams. So that always helps the cause when trying to sort this out. But with our large school, we got Liberty North coming in at number 1 this week, and they had a big week. They 10-runned number 1 ranked Nixa. They also beat Blue Springs South, who was in the top 5, and had 3 other great wins. So they are our new number 1. And they, of course, beat Liberty the week before in a really close competitive game. I believe that was a 1-0 ball game. In at number 2, we have Liberty out of Kansas City. Had a good week. Also beat Nixa in a tournament or a little round-robin doubleheader deal in Columbia, Missouri. Those two teams match up today, which we'll touch on later in the show. But Liberty North at number 1, Liberty is number 2. Jackson holding steady at number 3.
Before you go any further, I want to remind the folks, when we were talking back in, I think, December, you had these two teams really at the top. One of these two teams, going to say, I'm not trying to, but I just want people to know that's how good these teams are, and they are carrying their weight through this, aren't they, Kevin?
There was 3 teams I kind of had in that class, and Liberty North and Liberty were 2 of them. The other was CBC, who's had some rough injuries here. That's kind of having them take a step or 3 back, honestly. But in at 3 was Jackson, who's been pretty steady and have had some good games here recently. Just beat number 1, our top-ranked small school, Kennett, in a game this week. But they're in at number 3. Columbia Rockbridge had an absolute monster week. I like this ball club. They're 26-4 now. They come in at 4. This is a team that they have the pieces to be able to make a run at the state championship. So I like this Rockbridge team. Nixa has run up a gaudy record. They come in at number 5. They're 24-3. Now we got a good look at them versus Liberty North and Liberty, and they dropped both those games. But this is still a team I like. It's going to be interesting to see if they can come out of that southwest portion of Missouri to advance, to the state finals or state tournament, I should say. Number 6, Fort Zumwalt West. They've been hot. They've been stacking up wins. Led by Daniel Whistler, which we'll get into. He's been absolutely incredible, and then Deverman. So they got a really good 1-2 punch. They're in at 25-7. Number 7, Blue Springs South. They had a rougher week, but they played really good competition. So they're down to number 7. Another Springfield team, Kickapoo. They're rolling right now. They're 24. They're 20-4. Number 9, Eureka, 21-4-1. And number 10, Seckman, is 18-2-1. And 9 and 10 actually played each other last week to a draw.
Yes.
So they're pretty even. They're deserving to be right next to each other, I think.
Yeah, those ties there is against each other.
Yeah. And then right on deck, we got our next couple teams. I won't go through the whole list, but a couple of them right on the cusp. We got Francis Howell. We got Willard, who I still really like out of 5A. CBC, Parkway West, Staley, and Columbia Hickman, or just to name a couple of our on deck.
Real quick, before we get to the small school, I want to go over here because I follow this, and I'm sure you do, and we talked a little bit about this, but we look at the coaches poll. I look at the coaches poll to see where you're at, and it's a different mindset, isn't it, with the coaches poll?
Yeah, it is, and I think they're both good to look at. Now, our rankings are different because I do large school 5 and 6A together, and I do the small school 1, 2, 3, and 4 together. So mine's a broader look at the state. They, and there's some positives to both. They break it down by each class and do the top 10. So you're going to be able to recognize, to be honest, my poll isn't super fair to a 1A team. They're not going to be able to keep up with a Kennett and Southern Boone and Rogersville and St. Dominic. So the way they do their polling makes sense, but this opens up to larger discussions like, hey, who do we think, if the number 1A team played Kennett, who do you think would win, type thing, and this is kind of how I stack it up. So there are some differences. But other differences.
But one thing that I will say, because I was looking at this, all the teams you mentioned as far as 6A are there. I mean, so I want people to understand, and I loved the explanation, and I think always giving people perspective on how things are done and whatnot gives a good reference point. But it's not much different. There isn't any difference actually in the top 10 from the coaches to what you're saying.
And I glance at those as well. I typically come out with mine. I do mine late Sunday night, and then I'll release them Monday. I'll sleep on it, look at things one more time, make a last-second tweak here or there, and then I see theirs usually come out later in the day on Monday or even Tuesday. And I'd say the other difference is, those coaches vote on those, and they have different coaches from across the state. So I take my knowledge from across the state. Sometimes those coaches haven't played certain teams in other areas. Like, it's tough to go see Kennett. It's tough to see Jackson. So it's hard for a Kansas City coach to know where that team stacks up. So sometimes, naturally, if you see certain teams play, let's say you're a Kansas City team and you play Blue Springs South and Blue Springs and Liberty North and Raypeck and, Lee Summit West, et cetera, Rockhurst, you're naturally going to know that group of teams inside and out. But you might not know a thing about a Jackson, a Cape Central, Fox High School, Seckman, et cetera. So your rankings are going to tend to go off what you know. So I try to, and if you look at this, and it's not done intentionally, like I don't pick out one team from Kansas City, a team from St. Louis, a team from Springfield, a team from Columbia. If there was 10 teams from Columbia, Missouri that I thought were the best, or there's not enough teams there, I guess. If I thought there was 10 St. Louis teams that should be ranked 1 through 10, that's how I would put it. But it is pretty even. Like, there is pretty good representation across the state right now. And these coaches have done a great job. They get out and play each other so you can learn. Nixa playing Liberty and Liberty North. Yeah, they took 2 losses this weekend. I would say that was beneficial for Nixa, as opposed to, staying home, winning 2 games, and you've challenged yourself. You're preparing for the postseason. That'll get those kids ready. They'll know what it looks like if they meet Liberty or Liberty North in the state tournament. So I credit coaches; they've done a good job. Kind of cross pollinating across the state, in my opinion.
I love that thought. That's good. Exactly. So we got small schools. So remember, folks,
small schools is held pretty steady, Brian.
Yeah.
I got a good look at Kennett on Monday night down in Cape Girardeau. They played the SEMO ball tournament, the SEMO conference tournament this past weekend and into Monday, and I saw them in the championship game. They come in at release time of the poll with a 16-2 record. Southern Boone holding steady. They just keep piling up the wins at 24-1. Really strong team. Pleasant Hill is a riser. They topped Logan Rogersville last week in a good game. They're up to number 3 with a 17-1 record. Logan Rogersville, them and Pleasant Hill just swapped. They're in at number 4. Another riser, St. Dominic. They've been hot. They've been stacking up wins the past couple of weeks. They're in at number 5 at 19-5. Summit Christian in at 6. St. Pius X of Kansas City haven't played as many games. They're 11-3, but this is a super talented team. Won the 3A state championship last year. I believe they're 4A this year. It's going to be an interesting team to keep an eye on as we get into postseason time. John Burroughs having a great year, but had a little bit of a rougher week last week. Lost 2 games in the week, but they're in at 18-4. They're in the 8th spot. Valley Catholic dropped a couple games, but they're number 9 at 20-6. And then rounding out our top 10 is a Springfield area team, Hollister, at 14-6. And then just a couple on deck teams, Brian, that are just off the radar here, or outside the top 10. We got Stratford, Springfield Catholic, Blair Oaks, and Russellville. So, and we got some more teams in there as well, but you can head to our site if you want to see the complete list of the on-deck schools.
Yeah, go check out that. Go check out the rankings. I would, keeps you up to date, keeps you looking at it, and Kevin does a great job because what he explained, and that's the biggest thing I wanted to give, is allow you to explain and keep that thought process for people that maybe haven't heard it before, how you set the rankings, what you're doing. If you've seen the coaches polls that come out from the high school association, the coaches association, you might get a little different view, but because I think that's important to have perspective on how things come about.
Yeah, we put a lot of work into these, and they change weeks to week, and rightfully so. It's so competitive, especially at the top this year, and these teams are challenging themselves and playing each other. So there is some slight movement, but this is it's a fun time of year, and it's all going to sort itself out, and polls aren't going to mean too much once the balls get rolled and the ball rolls into play for once we start district and postseason.
Now, I want to ask you something, and I don't know if I'm not trying to outshare that, but St. Dominic is a Class 5 school. Because I know
did not know that.
Yeah, I know that's so tough because we were talking about that last year, and as late as everything came out, so it's tough to sometimes keep up with where they put these schools at times, isn't it?
It's extremely tough, and that's part of the reason we do the small schools in as many classes, because oftentimes you don't get their class ranking before after the season started even. Right. So, which is one of my gripes with Misha, who does a good job. It is extremely confusing because it's not, hey, Kirkwood High School is 6A in all sports, or Vianney is 5A in all sports. They do it different sport by sport, which is,
yeah.
I have my opinions on that, and I'll keep them to myself for now, I guess. But it makes makes for confusion. I understand it to some degree. They're trying to create a competitive balance. But the problem, the flaw in that is, let's just use Zumwalt West for example, or um, we'll use Blair Oaks because
Okay.
they fit this to a T. They have one of the best players in the state, if not the best player in the state, in Will Lippert. In terms of he creates an impact on both sides of the ball. He's a frontline arm. He's committed to Mizzou, but he's also an impact bat. And when that kid, they're going to win a bunch of games. They were in the state finals, state championships last year. Will's a sophomore. Will's going to be a junior. Next year he'll be a senior. Well, he's going to graduate the following year, and they're going to be pushed up in class. Not that it's a one-man team, but he's a superstar for that level of high school baseball or any level of high school baseball. When he's gone, the kids that were younger than him are going to be playing in a class based off of what the team was when Will Lippert was there. And it's going to set them up for some big challenges. Now, maybe they'll have him replaced and they'll be the next superstar. But that, to me, that doesn't make a ton of sense. I would rather go off of school size and over a decade or over time. I think it'll balance itself out. Yes, there are going to be runs when a team does dominate for 2, 3, possibly even 4 years, but that will balance out.
But you know as well as anybody that a Will Lippert, I mean, a school like Blair Oaks may have that kid maybe once every 25 years.
Exactly. And I was going to pull out Daniel Whistler, but that, Francis or for Zumwalt West is always going to be 6A. So it doesn't matter. Like,
Yeah.
they have a star. They're going to rise a little bit. Now, that's a great program, so they stay pretty consistent. But you got to look at like those 3, 4, and 5As as your examples for this when they're going to swing up a class, down a class,
Right.
et cetera. Westminster's going through a little bit of that right now. They and they have a very good
went up
team.
To 5. Yeah.
Correct. Yes.
And I didn't honestly. I found that out today. Because I want to talk a little bit about district matchups because of things, and I'm looking in St. Dominic's in District 4 of Class 5, and I was like, oh, I thought they were Class 4, and and so when I saw you had them ranked in that, I was like, oh no. So so just off the cuff in Class 5 in large school. Would you put? Let's talk about that a moment because you have them.
They would not be in
5.
the top 10.
They would not be
in the top 10. And last year, it came out even later, and like I had Westminster ranked in the small schools, and I just honestly said to myself, you know what? Forget it. I'm going to just roll with it because I feel like they're a small school. And I personally view St. Dominic as a small school. So that, but I did do it by class, so we'll have to make an adjustment there. But it's just, it's more of a, it's an interesting, larger discussion.
Yes. So let's look at this real quick because I think there's as far as looking at, when you're talking about the Class 5 part of it, District 3, MICDS, Pacific, Parkway Central, Parkway North, Rockwood Summit, Union, and Westminster Christian Academy. You've got, there's really good schools in there, not ranked in the top 10. Mm-hmm. Maybe some of those in the on deck in that second tier. Parkway Central is definitely a good baseball team.
I like Parkway Central. They're in our on deck.
On the large schools.
On the large schools, yes.
Westminster's been playing better. They're 15-9. They just got a win against MICDS. Pacific, of course, we know what they are. Then over in District 4, you have Warrenton, who's played pretty good ball. They're a Class 5 school this year. St. Dominic, Fort Zumwalt East. I think the rest with Hazelwood East, McClure, McClure North, North Point, you're not going to get, I mean, anything can happen.
Yeah.
But so Hannibal is a tough, I think might be a tough out in that district.
Traditionally strong program out of the northeast part of Missouri.
Right?
Yes.
So what are you seeing there? I mean, I think those are going to be very difficult districts, don't you?
I do, yeah. And right off the one thing that catches my eye, I see Zumwalt East as the host, which I think would be a slight advantage as well. And I like that Zumwalt East team. We've covered them and watched them with a game of the week a couple times now. I think that'll come down to St. Dominic and Zumwalt East, quite honestly. But you got some other players in there, Warrenton, Hannibal, are teams that are going to have a say in it. North Point, that's going to be a fun one to follow over the next couple of years. That's I was looking at their roster the other day, and I know some of those names. For those that don't know, they play a varsity schedule, but they do it with 0 seniors. So yeah, they're not ready to. They're not. Anything could happen. Right. But they're not going to compete in that district to win it this year, in my opinion. But it would not surprise me if in 2 years they're one of the best teams in that district. So it's going to, once they've got their full complement of students in there and they have a full senior class, I like that. I think that'll be a program that'll be a strong one, just given their proximity, and I think that. That'll end up being a strong program as well.
Wow. There you go, folks. Little preview. Then I was looking down here at District 7 and 8, or actually District 5, Camdenton High School. Camdenton's having a good year. Jefferson City has fallen on hard times. They fell to District Class 5, but they're not the same team as they were last year.
No, they have a great coach. They do a good job. He told me that this was most likely going to happen, and they're really young. So they're going to resurface here in another couple of years. And they play with the freshman shortstop. They got a young group. So I've seen Jeff City. Jeff City won the large school, the 6A state championship. That was probably 6 years ago now, 7 years ago. But that's a team that'll resurface, and they're just young right now. But I do like that Camdenton club out of District 5 this year.
Yeah.
And that's a bracket that they should be able to go through. Borgia's always tough. Warrensburg out of the kind of the western part of the central western part of the state is a solid ball club as well.
There you go. And then you look at District 6, one of the two of the top teams in Class 5 are not going to come out of this, Glendale or Willard. And that's going to be tough, right? Yeah,
and Branson's also a pretty strong school as well. So Willard is really battle-tested. I saw them play against Francis Howell. They're your defending 5A state champions. That's going to be an interesting one to follow. I do like that Willard team a lot. They're just outside our large school polls as well.
They can hang with some really good Class 6 schools.
Yes, they can.
So I just think Willard, I think you could see a repeat in that Class 5. I really do. They were really good last year. They got a lot of kids that came back this year, and it's just going to be tough. So a lot of still to go, but I just wanted to kind of give a glance at some of these schools in these districts and kind of get as we start moving into May and what that's going to look like coming up. So I think it's very interesting. And then Class 6, of course, we've always discussed that, and we're talking about the schools here as far as the rankings are concerned. And then you look at District 1 there, and one of the teams you looked at is Jackson. But Jackson's going to, I think Seckman's going to be tough. I think Lindbergh is still going to be a tough out.
Yeah, Lindbergh's a team that I've seen a couple times this year, and quite honestly, they've lost every time I've gone, but I really like their pieces. They have one of the best pitchers in the area, Dane Bourne, heading to Tennessee. He's a junior, junior lefty. They got Drew Polite, who's a big bat for him, and also a good arm, heading to Dyersburg State. And Ethan Smith, the big time left-hander, heading down to Missouri Southern. So Eli Melton going to Eastern Illinois. They got a really good team. Um, that they just haven't played up to full potential, to be quite honest with you. And they did this a little bit last year and got right and made a strong run. So I think that could definitely still happen. It would not shock me at all to see Lindbergh make a deep postseason run. Now, saying that, Jackson's really good. Jackson is legitimately one of the best 6A teams in the state. They got a really good program, got a really good team. I saw them on Monday. They won the SEMO Conference Tournament over Kennett in a championship game. They also have a big time arm, John Paul Sauer, who's one of the top sophomore pitchers in the state. They got a couple big bats. They just have a good program. So that's a really good group. And then you got Seckman's having a heck of a year. They're in our top 10. And Vianney, maybe for their standards, I would think it's fair to say they're down for their standards, but that's still a good high school baseball team. So that's going to be a pretty good district there.
I think you could get a surprise. It's not, I don't think
one other thing to mention in here is Oakville High School. They're going to have trouble winning that district, but they have the best freshman pitcher in the state, Adam Kilborn. I went and saw him the other night. He struck out 15 or 16 kids. He had a perfect game going through 4 innings. So that's a team that could beat anybody in game 1. So it's it's going to be an interesting district.
District 2, we all know, CBC was sitting there on top. They had the injuries, which I think opens the door to Eureka and Parkway West.
It's going to be interesting. It will be fun to see how they get this seeded too, because that's going to be a big factor in this. Because the 2-3 seed is going to have, and I'm not taking anyone, but they're going to have a much harder path than the 1 seed, and rightfully so, obviously. So there could be an opportunity to throw some, and save a pitcher for later in the bracket. CBC is still really talented. They got one of the best lineups in the state. They still have more than capable pitching. But it definitely opens the door. So Parkway West is rolling. They have a big-time arm in Luke Wright having a big year. Eureka has been good all season. I saw them play each other, Parkway West and Eureka, in a really tight game very early in the season. So that Parkway West got the better of in a 1-run game. So it's Parkway South has a good team. So it's going to be fun. And Marquette, arguably the most snake-bit team in the state. They had 2 of the best hitters in the state, and Mason Breidenbach and Jack Halabowski, both out for the year with injury. That would have been, Ryan, in my opinion, that would have been arguably the best 2-3 or 3-4. However, the coach was going to write the lineup. That would have been a really stout middle of the lineup there.
Man, it's always those shoulda, coulda, what would have been, right? But
yes.
Now, I know Halabowski's a junior, so we'll see him again.
Yes.
Breidenbach, is he a senior?
He'll be at Bradley University next year.
Okay. All right. So we won't get a chance to see that, which is that's a bummer in a way, because you like to see those things, but it happens. Nothing you can do about it.
It does, yeah.
Yeah. So District 4, again, we've talked about this. I'm gonna put something here there's two surprises in different ways. Zumwalt South has been playing really good baseball of late. In Class 6, a jump. And I know I was talking to Ryan Rapp over there. They were Class 6 by like 10 students. So that's kind of a tough pill to swallow, right? But they're playing really good baseball. They've had some really good wins. And then on the other side of that, though, is Timberland, who has been sliding and took another loss against Washington yesterday. So I think those are the two interesting teams in this district. Agreed?
Yeah, I think that's a fair statement. It's going to be a very interesting district because you got some of the perennial heavy hitters there in Zumwalt South and Francis Howell, and no one. I think everyone with clear mind would say that those are your perennial powers right there, and they've lived up to the billing pretty much this season. But you got some other contenders in there, and I like that Holt team. We saw them on Friday night. They can really swing the bats, and they got a couple left-handers that I like. Liberty Wentzville has struggled, but they're going to put out Seth Bennis. You're going to have a challenge on your hand. With the game he pitches. Timberland, I would put them in the same category as kind of Lindbergh. They have done it this season though. I believe they were 11-1 at one point,
right?
So they were hot. We talked to their coach, and at one point, like a week or two ago, they got hammered by the flu bug, and fell on some tough times. Troy's kind of sputtered, but is still a capable group. They got some good players.
I saw Troy on Saturday against Oak Grove, and Oak Grove is a decent team. Nothing, didn't look, just but a solid baseball team. And Troy looked good. Their pitching looked better. They needed those wins. Got a chance to talk to Coach Rogers, and but they came back in the conference and dropped a one-run ball game. And that's kind of where Troy has been all year, right?
Yeah. Yep. You don't want to have a bad day versus them, because they can rise up and beat you. So that's what I like about this district. And Zumwalt North has Tanner Paschke, great arm. So going to Iowa. So there's really not a pushover. There might be a couple teams that aren't deep enough to actually win it. But anyone could literally beat anyone on a given day, and that's the fun thing about District 4. And I think there's a couple teams in there that legitimately could make a run at the state championship.
Agreed. And I think that's one of the only ones that I've looked at, and we'll look down here in a minute, but I think it's one of the only districts that you can't take a game off. You can't, we can throw off here and probably still be, no, don't do it, man.
Right. Right.
Because you'll get beat.
Yes, I agree with you on that.
And that's just crazy, that deal. And I want to bring to bear this. We were talking about great pitching performances yesterday. Daniel Whistler for West against a very good Francis Howell Central team, which I think is the favorite to come out of District 3. Personally, I think you still have SLU in there that's really good. I think those are the top two teams in District 3. But Daniel Whistler throws a complete game shutout, gave up 2 hits, and struck out 16.
Wow. Yeah, really impressive. I've seen Daniel a couple times this spring. He's been good, very good each time. Not that good though. that's a special performance, even for a guy his ilk. So very impressive out, and we've had some good pitching performances here over the past week or two.
I'm impressed by the pitching in this state, Kevin. And you see, you're as a scouting director, you're seeing all these guys, but throughout the state, there's some really good arms in the state of Missouri, isn't there?
There's some big arms this year. And, I was talking with our PBR Oklahoma guy, and Oklahoma's a proud baseball state and have some very good programs. He just outright said, Missouri has the big arms. So we it's nationally known that there are some big time arms in our state, and it's not just seniors too. I mean, there's juniors, there's sophomores doing it. There's a handful of freshmen making big impacts on varsity teams. So I feel bad for the hitters. Yesterday I went to the Chaminade versus Smet game at Chaminade, and Charlie Weber was on the mound, who is a future games guy for Team Missouri, signed at Wofford. He's the ace at Chaminade, who's a solid team, but also not in our top 10. And they're playing DeSmet, who's also a good team, not in our top 10, but a good team. And they have Josh Cunningham throwing. These kids, Charlie's already signed with a Division I. Cunningham, in my opinion, will be a Division I. And these are, not top 15 teams in our state. And they both roll out starters throwing 90 miles per hour. Charlie was up to 91, Cunningham up to 90. Neither kid walked a kid the entire game. They both have really good breaking balls. They both struck out 7 guys. One threw a 2-hitter, one threw a 5-hitter, and it was a 2-1 game. I looked at my watch afterwards, and it started on my unofficial watch. It was an hour and 14-minute game.
As an umpire, you got to appreciate that.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
That's unbelievable. But you know what? And I've done a game like that. It was a high school game, 18U. Team from Colorado was playing Sherman's St. Louis Naturals 18U team. And there was a young man that was going to Mizzou on the mound for the Naturals. It's been a few years back. I forget his name. But he was sitting 91, 92. And the other kid from Colorado was sitting 88, 89. And they were in the strike zone. And we did that game in an hour and 20 minutes in a 2-1 ball game.
It is unbelievable. I think back to high school, which is now, over 20 years ago. I was a 99 grad, and I could tell you, and I mean, I specifically remember seeing my first 90-mile-per-hour fastball. And if there was a kid that threw 90, he was most likely he was going to get drafted, and he was signed at like the biggest school or whatever. But there was only like 1 or 2 of those kids. Yeah. Now I go to a game and like it's a big deal still, but it isn't that big of a deal. And the kids of all the hitters have seen it before already. So it's
crazy.
It's incredible how many 90-mile-per-hour arms there are across the state.
District 5 is one that I think we talked about the Blue Spring schools, but battles on, little rough patch, but Grain Valley, who is up into 6A this year from 5A last year.
They were in the 5A state championship.
Right. Good baseball team. Hickman and Rockbridge. So you got the 2 Blue Spring schools, Grain Valley, Hickman, and Rockbridge. That is a very difficult district.
That's a strong district, especially at the top. Both Blue Springs schools are good, especially South, but Blue Springs has one of the best sophomore arms. Cole Gibbler heading to Arkansas. Blue Springs South is absolutely loaded. They came over and won made the Midwest Classic finals early in the year. Columbia Rockbridge is just on an absolute tear right now. I think they're number 5 in our large school rankings, and Columbia Hickman's really, really good. They're on that on deck, and then you got Grain Valley, who was, made the Missouri 5A state championship last year in Springfield, and that's the young group.
Man Will Lippert, right? That's Grain Valley.
He's at Blair Oaks.
Blair Oaks. Sorry,
so he'll be at 4A.
Yeah. So I mean, again, difficult. District 6, you got those two teams that are sitting there, Nixon, Kickapoo. I think that's really going to be where you're at with District 6. Maybe see
Joplin and Ozark are also good teams.
Yeah.
So there is some depth there as well.
So District 7, the Lee Summit schools, Raymore Peculiar, Rockhurst. I've heard Rockhurst a little bit. I don't know much about that district that far over. Talk to us a little bit about 7 there.
Yeah, Ray-Pec has probably 4 Division I arms on their team. So they got some big-time pitching. Lee Summit West is having a really nice year, strong team. Rockhurst, they have some talent. I would say they're still an up-and-coming program, but similar to Vianney maybe this year. Really good program traditionally. I would expect them to be back in the mix for a state championship run here in the next couple of years. Still strong this year, maybe not state championship quality yet, but solid district. I'd have my eye heavily on Ray-Pec and Lee Summit West in that district.
Okay. And then the last big one, man, Liberty North, Oak Park, Park Hill South, and Staley. Again, one of those gauntlets. I think it's roll the dice, pick 'em. Who's coming out of that? I think it's just whatever pitcher is hot on the day. Agreed?
Yeah. This is going to be another interesting one. This one's going to, being the 1 seed is going to be a big deal. Not that it isn't anytime, but there's 3 that kind of have separated themselves, and Staley's probably the clear number 3, but a really good number 3. That team could make a run to the state championship. And then Liberty North. Whoever gets the 1 seed, doesn't have to play as challenging of a semifinal game. Because, you're going to have Staley most likely there, and then Liberty and Liberty North are both, they're number 1 and 2 in the state for a reason. Right. So that'll be interesting to see how that gets seeded. Those two are 100% in the game of the day today. They play each other at 1:00 at Creekside. Looking forward to following that game and seeing the action from there. Last week, Liberty North defeated Liberty. I believe it was 1-0. If it wasn't 1-0, it was 2-1. So it was a really good game. So that's going to be that's a tough district because Park Hill South, those are good programs as well. So you got 3 programs that could legitimately, win the state championship in that district. One will advance. One will be a district champion. The other 2 won't get out of their district.
It's going to be some good baseball. I'm looking forward to the month of May, to the districts, and how that thing's going to roll out, because I think we're going to see some really good baseball.
Oh, I 100% agree. I can't wait.
So, and we're finishing up here this season. The GAC, there's a few teams left playing each other. Holt, again, wins again in the GAC. Francis Howell. Timberland dropped 1 to Washington, I think they're finished with theirs. I know East is out, or they've stopped there. So we're finishing up the GAC, and we've been having a lot of fun bringing the GAC game of the week. We were at the ballpark at Lindenwood at Lou Brock Sports Complex. That was really fun. I enjoyed that a lot.
Great venue, a lot of fun, and some really good baseball games. We watched a couple walk-offs and 1-run games there on Friday night. It was great baseball.
And I think as you look at that, like we said, East they kind of hit just like that. They hit a wall, to say the least, in the middle here after beating South on the GAC game of the week. In a really solid performance, they fell into a stretch that was really tough. But I think it'll be interesting to see how they come back and how they finish out the season and into districts in that GAC Central. I think South the same way. So I think those teams right there in the Central are going to be tough. I want to see Warrenton. I'd like to see that team play. They've got a big game coming up. I think it was it yesterday? It might have been yesterday. I don't know if it got rained out. Because I know Warrenton was playing St. Charles West, and that was going to pretty much decide that the GAC North Division. And so I think that was that Monday? Hang on. I'm going to look real quick, Kevin, because I'm interested. Because I was talking with Coach Allen, and he's got St. Dominic coming up too.
Big game.
Big game. So you're talking about two big games there. I don't see that they played there. Was it Tuesday? Oh my goodness. I should have had this in place already. My fault, folks. Hate to do that. Maybe it's today. I wanted to get out and watch it a little bit because I think it was going to be definitely well worth it. I think Warrenton has played some pretty good ball at their level. No offense and that's tough to say sometimes, don't you think? You say, oh, at your level. Well, wait a minute. No, Warrenton is playing Union today, so I'm not quite sure. I have to go back and look at that. Go ahead.
No, I was going to say, yeah, that's a fair comment. There's a reason we have classes, and kind of back to the point we were talking about earlier. The larger schools, you have 1,800 students in your district or in your school. You're going to have an advantage on the team that has 1,200, and the team that has 1,200 has an advantage on the team that has 700, and that's why I like going off those enrollment numbers more as opposed to win-loss records from years prior to those kids being there even. So it's I think saying your level is fine, and John Burroughs, we'll take them. They're a really nice team. They are not in the same class as a Liberty. If they played Liberty, it would not. Liberty's clearly the better program. That doesn't take anything away from John Burroughs. They're a really good baseball team for their class, and they might win the state championship at their level. But their school is a third of the size of Liberty, so it makes sense that Liberty would be better.
And I was looking at it here. It was they were playing St. Dominic. It was scheduled for yesterday. It doesn't look like that game maybe came off because I don't see a score, so it might have been postponed. And Warrenton and St. Charles play tomorrow. It's scheduled for tomorrow. But St. Charles West, I should say, excuse me. St. Charles West, we saw them Saturday against Sullivan. And Jackson Mears, Junior, they ran out there. He threw a really good game, threw a complete game shutout. If his arm is working, they have Josh Newell. Their lineup as far as St. Charles West at Class 4, I think is pretty good up and down. They need a little more help at the bottom of their lineup. I was talking with Coach Allen about that. They need a little more help there, I think. But the top of their lineup is really good. He's got Josh Newell at the top there. Brendan Goring is hitting the ball very well.
Young guy that can really swing the bat. I believe he's a freshman. He's going to be a name to know moving forward. He was a big bat for us on the Junior Future Games Missouri team last summer. So that's impressive that he's creating impact as a freshman already.
I did not know Goring was a freshman. Yeah, I did. Yeah. And then they have Barrett Disselhorst, big kid, first baseman. He's hitting .381. Drew Blassingame, their catcher, did a nice job behind the plate. He's hitting .438. So they're getting production out of their lineup. I just don't know, and this was the question, and I think Coach Allen was right. it'll be interesting to see where their arms. Do they have the arms to make that run? And I think that's the biggest
They can
question.
beat anyone on any given day when Josh Newell's on the mound. And then, yes, it's going to depend on what do they have behind that.
Yeah, and we saw Jackson Mears. He looked really good. Sullivan wasn't. They were a solid team. They had some pretty good bats. I'll tell you what, I saw a young man for Sullivan, and I don't know where he goes to. He's hitting the ball very well. He started playing third base. His name's Gavin Schmidt. And my goodness, that kid scooped up everything. It's one of the best gloves I've seen in a long time. Just natural feel, movement, footwork, hand-eye coordination. He took 3 or 4 hits away from St. Charles West just with his glove. Josh Newell hit a smoking one-hopper down the line. He's playing on the cut, has to short hop it, and it looked like it was a Sunday drive, like he's just playing, like coach just hit him a ground ball, just sing bang, and makes a really strong throw. He was our player of the game for Sullivan. And then he moves to shortstop and does the same thing. He didn't have as good a day at the plate, but he made a catch on just that short pop fly behind the shortstop that
Yep.
You're running full out, and you have to make the over the shoulder catch, which is you don't see many high school kids doing that. He did that, and it didn't look like it was pretty effortless. He made the play. It looked like he was in control of his body. One of the best defenders I've seen in a long time is just with a glove. And, for a team like that who you don't get a lot of pub at Sullivan, it was really nice to see.
Yeah, and team defense, we talk about it's important in all levels of baseball. It's even rare to see great defense at the high school level, and we talk about that. With Zumwalt West, they don't have mega superstars from a positional standpoint, but what they do have is phenomenal team defense. And when you get a high school team that plays great team defense, I'll be able to show you a team that's going to win a lot of games.
Exactly. And the kid's hitting 386 on the year. He's on base is 500, and he's slugging 500. So he's getting it done with the glove. And I always like to give shout outs to kids, you may not see them or know them about that. Having a good high school career, he may not play after. I don't know what his projection is that way. But it was really fun watching that game. It was a really good game between St. Charles and Sullivan. It was a 4-0 ball game. Troy looked good. It was a really good weekend for the GAC, I think, overall. They did a nice job there putting that on. It was run well. They did a great job. All the ADs, all the different activities directors that came to the complex, got to meet them, talk to them. It was really a lot of fun. So big shout out to the GAC, Scott Harris, those guys for doing a good job that way. So I just wanted to say that. And then we've got one more that we're going to come up with. And that's a week from Friday. I talked with Coach Funkhauser over at Edwardsville, and we'd had this one on our eyeballs, on our radar to finish off the season. And we're going to do that. Edwardsville, I believe, they played Belleville East last night. I didn't see if they won or not.
They lost their first game of the year.
There you go. And I was over in that area because my grandson was playing T-ball, his first T-ball game. So we were over in Troy, Illinois, watching the little guys run around trying to figure out how to play baseball. That was fun. It was hilarious, man. You just kind of remember, hey, look at this.
Yeah.
But we'd stopped over by the park because we're getting ready to. We're going to broadcast the Francis Howell and Edwardsville Tigers ball game on Friday the 13th. That's a 4:30 game. So I am looking forward to that and getting that Illinois Missouri feel in that kind of push because Edwardsville is, as you said, they lost their first game. They were undefeated, and that's difficult.
They're a machine. They are the number one school in the state of Illinois, and obviously Francis Howell is one of the top teams in Missouri, so that should be a fun game to cover.
Oh, man. So, Kevin, how are we finishing off this week? What do we got coming up?
Well, today I'm geared up for Liberty versus Liberty North over at Creekside Complex in Kansas City. That's going to be a fun one. Unfortunately, we got some rain in the forecast the next couple days too. So I'm going to take advantage of it today and see what we can come up with Thursday and Friday.
And we'll see. So we got the districts. I think there's about maybe a handful of games left for teams depending upon their schedules finishing out this weekend and next week. And then we're heading to the district playoffs. So it's going to be fun to watch, guys. Thanks, Kevin, as always. Appreciate the knowledge, man.
Had fun.
Absolutely. Hey, remember, everybody have a great day in the Lord. All you pitchers, keep throwing strikes, and you hitters, hit them where they ain't. And we will see you next time.